Hi, I am Jenny Leigh Hodgins. I'm the host of the Creative Memorial Planning Group, and I'm really excited to continue my interviews with death doulas today, featuring one of our members, a new member of the Creative Memorial Planning Group. She's a very experienced death doula and death educator. And before I introduce my wonderful guest today, I want to say that this group and this presentation become great drops in the ocean toward making death talk a natural part of our lives. And so I'm really grateful and proud of you for tuning in to watch and learn. The funny thing is that we will all experience the loss of a loved one, and we will all leave this world ourselves. Yet so many people avoid this topic out of superstitious beliefs or outdated fears. My take on death is that how we live has a direct impact on how we die. And that means to me facing life and death courageously, strongly, and with intent to encourage those around us to live cheerfully and without fear. One way to polish our inner strength is frankly to talk more about whatever causes angst. I find that talking about things life to life opens the way to hope and the energy to live fully. So I'm really glad you're joining me today, and we're going to delve into this concept a little bit more deeply when I introduce my guest. So for those watching, please ask any questions in the comments section or below, or if anything resonates with you, put in like a hashtag AHA, and we will definitely check the comments afterwards and address any of your questions that you might have. So without further ado, I would like to introduce and welcome today's guest, an end-of-life consultant, death doula trainer, and a clinical hypnotherapist, Denise Love. Welcome.
Jenny, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
So Denise, I'm so excited you are here. You shared that you've had lots of experience being in remote villages in the developing countries, lots of home deaths, and you've supported people in really medical situations, and that you've facilitated many groups to discuss death. And you said your contribution to the topic of the end-of-life experience is, as you said, quote, openness when discussing dying, laughter and fun. Just knowing the dying is a simple rite of passage, living life fully till you die, end quote. And that ties right in sync with my opening words today. How would you recommend someone start the conversation with their loved ones about their end-of-life plans?
Look, it's so challenging for everybody, and there's something about it. It's as though we think that if we're going to talk about it, we're going to die. And that's been my experience with many, many people. Or, look, it's just too hard. Let's not talk about it. There is only one given in life, and that is that we're going to die. Right. So I use the word death and open really openly all the time and sort of shock people. But I think to talk to somebody is, I was just talking to somebody on the phone the other night that rang and said, how do I say it? I said, as quickly as possible. The quicker you say, hey, I think this might be time to talk about your death, whether they're really healthy and well or 7 days or 7 minutes away from dying. Nobody has that opportunity. So I just say to friends and family and everybody, have you ever thought about what it might look like, sound like, and feel like when you die? And I find that sort of, when you offer them the opportunity to talk about sound like, feel like, where might it be? What, who do you want around you? We'll put the words in their mouth to start with, rather than just saying, let's talk about death.
Right.
So I find by saying, let's talk about your death. What does it look like, sound like, feel like, even smell like? They sort of go into a visual of their own. Yeah.
You're easing them into it, making them comfortable with it. I love that. Very, very empathetic. By the way, how did you get started into working as a death doula?
Look, I've always been interested. Occurrences in my own life. Mother died as a child when I was 9, I think, or 8 or 9. Found my nana in the bath, dead. So it's, and plus I always lived with the grandparents, so I participated in the process of old age and dying at home or in hospital as a young girl. But I've never felt uncomfortable. And then I ended up nursing, and of course in my first week of nursing I turned over a lady to give her a bottom rub and gave her the beautiful bottom rub only to realise she was dead. So there's been sort of, nursing-wise, it happened regularly in my life, and I found it fascinating. I found the stillness of death, or the pause, really, really interesting. It's the only real pause in life. So then I was a palliative care nurse, and I saw all the gaps in palliative care. I found nobody will, there's just not time. There's not time to have the in-depth conversations, and it's all sort of so much centered around the medical side of, or the pain killing, or the this. So I just walked away from nursing within developed countries, and decided I had to train people to be non-medical support to people who are dying. And it's been the most rewarding, amazing, wonderful job. I also work as a birth doula, so I look after both ends of life, birth and death, and I just love it.
That's amazing. So now I know you mentioned birth doulas, and some people do know what that is. A lot of people have never even heard of a death doula and don't know what a death doula would offer. Can you maybe describe a scenario where you've served as a death doula and kind of paint a picture of what that looks like for us?
Sure. So obviously it's a bit different at the moment with COVID. So I'm doing all of those sessions on Zoom, or people take videos and send them to me. But so at the minute, just like we're doing now, somebody sets me up in the bedroom and I get to talk to the relatives and the dying person. Or until this all happened, I usually get a call from a family member who is exhausted, whether it's a hospital death or a home death. They ring and say, oh, my uncle or my dad or my mother's or my little child, I look after a lot of children that are dying as well. They ring and say, we just don't know where to go now. And it's usually when death is fairly close. Alternatively, I get a phone call from somebody who's just been diagnosed with cancer. And they say, I'm not sure I want to have all those chemotherapy and radiotherapy. I need somebody to talk to. So that's when I love to grab somebody. But what it means is I either visit them once a week. I often sometimes just visit relatives and support them in support the dying person, or I'm actively involved daily, calling in so they can have a rest, and sitting with the family, give them courage to do the task. But, often I'm not with the person when they die, because my dream is that family members will feel strong and supported so they can be the people that are there. So I see my biggest role as giving that insight, that courage, those words to people to be with the closest person they've got around them. So, it's everything from calling in, checking that the bathroom's clean. I'm not a cleaning person, but I do little things like that, to, sitting with a person and doing nothing, or sitting with a person saying, tell me what it feels like to be dying. Tell me what it feels like watching your family come in and cry on you every time they walk through the door. So opening up really challenging conversations quickly. And some people say, dying person or relative, I don't want to talk about that, I just want you here. I say, fine, I'll say nothing. So it's this in-depth conversation, or it's do nothing. And doing nothing is often the most powerful thing you can do.
Yeah, sitting with someone and just being by their side is a big part of your role, it sounds like. And that means so much to people, whether they want to talk or not. That's a beautiful gift that you're giving people. I'm just amazed by that. So you and I actually offer some similar overlapping services in regard to preparing end-of-life plans for our clients. And I personally advocate more alternatives to traditional funeral plans, that are more earth-friendly, cost-reducing, and personally tailored. More, I'm speaking in terms of, the handling of the remains and preparing a goodbye ritual. But one of the alternatives that I try to help people understand, learn about, is a natural burial as an option for handling the remains. Can you describe what you would do if you do this as a death doula for somebody that wants to opt for a natural burial, and how shrouding as an alternative would be incorporated? Have you had any experiences with that?
Absolutely. Most people that I die with shroud rather than coffin. And also, depending where we are in the country or which country we're in, because I do teach this course in many countries. But I find, traditionally we wash bodies, and I'm never quite sure you have to be quite so clean to die or to be buried or burnt. And so I do a shrouding of bodies so that we're not overly handling the body afterwards. So very much part of my role is to suggest, I've got my own end-of-life document that says, do you want to be shrouded or in a coffin? Do you want to be left alone? Do you want to be dressed or not dressed? To try and break down all these stereotypical ways that people are dying and being overly handled. Most people I die with are in the clothes they die in, and we either take them off if we're going to a natural burial site because they don't want any synthetic fabrics. Most people I'm with are very simply dressed in the clothes they die in, which is usually, I suggest, cotton nighties or cotton pyjamas in the last few days, and with no synthetics. We might even cut the buttons off and just in the sheet they're in, provided it's 100% cotton, we shroud. And if we need to go into a coffin, we can rent a coffin just to get to the cemetery. There's certain rules around certain countries and states.
Specifically, I know that one of the alternatives, as we talked about here, is for someone to have a natural burial and, like you said, to choose something very natural material, cotton or bamboo or something like that, where they're very comfortable. But have you participated in preparing the body and actually helping through the burial process? What does that look like?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so normally it's just at home, or we go into the hospital. If the family is very hospital orientated, but they're very, they want to have a great experience. As a death doula, not all death doulas do this, but them right through to the last minute. So I might talk with a local celebrant if that's what they want. I might work with a local funeral director, or I might do absolutely everything and leave the body ourselves in the back of a car. We might hire a car to do it. It's usually we bring all the bodies home from hospital if they don't get the body home. We often ask a funeral director to do that if the family doesn't feel comfortable just picking up a body. We transport it home and we might sit with it for an hour, 2 hours or 3 days. And usually I facilitate something around everybody sitting around, and we might do a beautiful little ceremony, or I might write a note and put it in a jam jar on that day about where feelings go. You go home for a couple of hours or 3 days. There's different processes we can go to make a week. We're going to wrap it in. We might all send messages of love, or we might go out to the garden and pick things that we think they want to take on their journey with them. It's about that first 4 hours after death, feeling the time when the deep emotions are raw and beautiful, giving an outlet for that as well. And we do go out and walk the earth. I suggest everyone takes their shoes off and just walk on the green grass and really ground yourself. And I say to them, this is only death. This is just the prize. This is the prize we're all born with. And when you organise the words around it, it's amazing how comfortable people can be. And secondly, when you treat it with so much awe, I guess, it elevates the feelings of people to a different level. And if they've participated in as part of the death process and planning and knowledgeable what is possible, I'm blown away by families about how creative or not creative. Some families just say, no, don't want to do any of that stuff. And I say, fine, have a beautiful dinner together and I'll see you tomorrow. So it's not ritualising it for ritual's sake. I'm really aware that we're over-ritualising it already as an alternative, if you know what I mean. So some families, no, I'm done. I've done all my loving the last week. I don't need to do any more. Let's just wrap them in a shroud, get them to the crematorium or to this, where we're going to bury them, and done. Don't need to do that anymore. And this is when they thought they needed elaborate stuff. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
I love that. And yeah, I've been talking about this in my lives too, that really it's only happened in the last couple hundred years that the medical industry and the corporate funeral industry have just taken death away from people. And it's such a taboo topic that people don't realize. They've kind of like left it to the corporate world and the medical world to just deal with it. And I love that the idea of, well, first of all, my services help exactly that. We're walking through people, what their preferences are, what their values are, and finding what kind of, alternative to traditional corporate, plans resonate with them, like whether it's for handling the remains or like you talk about for a goodbye ritual. Some people want absolutely nothing. Others want something really, a lot of participation and something meaningful. Others want a little bit or zero religious. I love the idea that it can be tailored to what the person wants and to what's comfortable for the family. And the idea of using a death doula, particularly, for me, just really puts the that really empowers the family and the dying person to have death in their control, and they are able to personalize it in a way that makes it really meaningful for them. And so I love what you do. It's just a beautiful thing, and I think more people are becoming aware of this and recognizing you don't just have to rely on a corporate funeral anymore. You can really take this into your own hands and empower yourself and your loved ones to make it really personal and meaningful. My understanding of death doula often is it's involved often at the very end of life, and often death doulas find they get involved right before someone is about to die. But I'm looking at, because I do a lot of pre-preparation for people and helping educate them to these alternatives, I'm wondering, even for myself as a plan B, like what if I live to a ripe old age or I suddenly get ill? I would like to incorporate, because I'm single, I don't have children, and I don't want to burden, the rest of my family with that, because they have their own, families. So how would you recommend someone plan ahead to incorporate having a death doula involved? How can we incorporate that in our end of life plans?
Well, it's so many single people are out there, and so many people are fractured from their families these days as well. And also, my recommendation to people so much is that often families aren't the ideal people to be doing this stuff with you. It often needs to be a third party or just a friend who's not too emotionally involved. Right. It's not the enemy. And I think that's what bothers me most. If we do our dying wishes, and the other thing is, the more often you do it, I probably relook at mine every 12 months, and it changes. I used to know exactly the music I wanted playing, and everything I thought I needed, I wanted. Now I don't give a damn. It doesn't matter to me what happens when I die. When you finally get your head around that death is just death, and I say to when they say, I want my beautiful linen suit on today, I say, go and buy one now. Wear it now. Why do you want to wait till you're dead and we're going to burn it? So it's having simple, open conversations with people about things. And at the moment, it's actually harder, I'm finding, to talk to people during the pandemic, because it's real. People are really honestly scared of dying.
Exactly. That's why I started this group, Creative Memorial Planning, now, because of the situation.
The planning needs to happen now, because in 3 days we might all be dead. Right. We just don't know.
Well, and that kind of speaks to the question that I have, that I fully agree with that. But how do people plan well in advance to incorporate a death doula? How do they get that in their end of life plans if they wanted to do that and they don't want to go through a corporate funeral scenario to do that?
Okay, so I'll send you a copy of, and anybody's welcome to ask for it, a copy of my advance directive says, do you want to be at home? Do you want this? Do you want that? And I suggest you just say, have a death doula with me, please, when I'm dying. So it's actually a death doula. It doesn't matter which one, because I might be dead first. But all that needs to be incorporated into the decision making. So I'd be honoured and delighted for anybody, email, or I'll put the link up. They can just open it on Dropbox and it's there with all these. Please get a celebrant or somebody like yourself or an advance directive specialist to sit, not a lawyer, no interest in paying $800 to a lawyer to do this, it's to all the lawyers, but really basic life stuff.
Right.
And to start talking to your children about it.
Right.
It's like we're scared to talk about sex to our children. We're scared to talk about blood to our children.
It's part of life.
We're scared to talk about death. Let's just do it.
This is really great, because this is exactly what I do as a service as well for the pre-planning part of it. Just getting their ideas out and exploring these alternatives. Some of them don't even know that these alternatives exist. So this kind of dialogue and letting them know what exists is wonderful. And then just getting it mapped out. That's pretty much what I do. Is just the difference is, I think, for a lot of people that are new to learning about what a death doula can do, is that most people think, well, we don't need to think about that unless we're ill or unless the end of life. But in my opinion, I'm thinking of my own life, for example, to not burden my loved ones. I want that as a plan B. If I don't go quickly, I want to have someone there, because, as you may not know my story, but I've served unofficially as a celebrant for more than 20 memorials, and that's how I got into this, because I went through my own tragedies. And having had to map those things out on my own, I realized from helping other people through their losses, many of the people that I've worked with said exactly what you just said, that it was so relieving and comforting to have someone there that wasn't in the middle of grief, that could just walk them through it a little bit. So I think that's a big benefit or advantage of having a death doula involved, particularly in that kind of scenario. Can you maybe address what you think are some of the other benefits of including a death doula to maybe take the stress out of death and dying? What are some benefits people would gain from incorporating a death doula?
I find huge shift in relationships. Most families have issues in their lives with each other or the fear of death or something. And I just think having somebody walk and say, hi, tell me who you are. Tell me what your role in the family is. How can I support you? What is it you'd like from me? Just bringing the conversation open, I find, is massive. But taking that responsibility away too. So, you know, I find just being an adjudicator and being a planner. So, you know, you work very quickly who family members are, for example. Or I say to the person who's dying, who's your most reliable? Who's your most unreliable? What gift do they have? And giving them a task allocation. If a doula says, why don't you plan the funeral? Why don't you pick the music? Why don't you, you know, pick a sheet out of the cupboard that we're going to wrap Pop in or Grandma in or little Joey in?
It's much what a celebrant does as well, in that sense, just delegating and facilitating,
guiding. And they feel so excited. I can't believe how people come and say, oh, I picked the mauve sheet. Like you'd think it, you know, you'd given them a major task at a funeral.
But it's so meaningful because they're involved in it. They're participating. It's so meaningful that way. And they don't have the burden of having to figure things out because you're there to guide them.
And the other thing, so a really major thing I find I do as a doula is to say there is no task. So aside from those basic ones that we do, the task of dying is to let the person have the space to do it. Get hold of your feelings and emotions for 24 hours. Stop your sobbing every time you walk in because that's self-indulgent in your own feeling. And it can sound really harsh at times, but I say, why don't you just go and sit and be present? Because most of the feelings of sadness is, what am I going to do after you're gone? So you're already in your grief about when they're gone. If you go and sit in the space of the dying person and look at the freckles on their arm and watch their mind, body, soul and what's going on, you'll be amazed how calm you feel too. And you don't indulge, you stay in the moment more rather than, oh, I don't want this to happen. How can I be letting my little son die or whatever it is? Get out of the guilt and just stay in the moment for a minute.
Be present, yeah.
Yeah, it's very much about being able to see the scene as it is, or just say to the family, we clearly have a really challenging family environment here. Can you all sit on your feelings till afterwards and just be there for the dying person? So it's very much often about just solving people's problems or sitting with the dying person and saying, how does it feel? Tell me what's going on. So, you know, the role, and sometimes I do, but also giving permission to do nothing. There's a bit of competition going on about who held their hand last or who had them in their arms last as they died. People say to me all the time, oh, I was holding their hand when they died. And I said, you know, so I say to people, often it's better if we're out in the lounge room while they're dying. Let's give them the space to die. Most of us don't like sitting on a toilet doing our business with people staring at it. And a lot of us
keeping it real.
Yeah, and a lot of us don't like to be watched while we're sleeping. So let's move out of the room rather than have 12 people all watching for the last breath.
I like that your emphasis is on, you know, really having compassion for the one who is, you know, dying. And also I really like that you're embracing, helping people to even be present to the idea that they need to embrace the moment and the connection they have with that person, as opposed to just, you know, like you said, being a little self-indulgent and dealing with their own emotions. You gently remind them, you know, the dying process is about being there and being there, completely being there, you know, and being present. I love that because a lot of families, like you said, they're dysfunctional or people don't know how to deal with their feelings. So having someone there to just kind of be a calm presence and help remind them of that bond that they need to be present with so that they can experience that fully. I think people aren't comfortable being uncomfortable, and so they avoid it, and it's just a habit, you know, that, so like put your phone down, you know, and kind of be in the moment. And I like that role that you take of kind of guiding people to what's really most essential. I love that. Once they pass away, what is your involvement as a death doula for, say, a natural or a green burial or an in-home funeral service?
Sure. So usually what happens, often, most times these days, I'm not with the person when they die. But just because there's no, as a daughter, I don't have to witness the death. And if the family are really in tune and logged in. So normally I say, look, just give me a call when you need me or want me, or let me know when you'd like me to come. But I say usually after about 4 hours, it's a beautiful time for me to come, and we do the next lot of. I've usually sat with a dying person and said, you're very aware that you want your body to be treated with respect and calmness, and you don't want too many rituals for the minute about your actual body. They can do rituals of other sorts around the person. But I usually turn up after about 4 hours and we sit down and I say, tell me the story. What was it like? And so when we've had the storytelling, it's really interesting how people are then ready to move into the next part. But we've usually got it planned. So what I've got a beautiful process where instead of washing the body, we do the ritual of putting them in a shroud, and as we cover the feet, we say thank you to the feet that walk the earth. There's a butcher or a baker or a mother or a child. And each part of the body that we cover with a sheet, or with, I've got shrouds you can spend $700 on, but a plain cotton sheet is the most cost-effective and green way to go. We do this ceremony, and if it's children involved, then we put them down at the foot and they fold grandma's feet in or whatever it is. So I'll often facilitate that just by standing at the foot of the bed and, ad-libbing, although I've done it so many times it's comfortable, but I've got something people can read as well if they want that. So just acknowledging every part of their body. And let's look at the ears that heard my voice. As we cover the head, we go through a process of, and I feel like it's a beautiful space to allow the body to finish off whatever it is we do as a body when we've died. We've all got theories about that, but I try not to ever impose a theory. I say finish the tasks of dying, because we know a body goes on shutting down for up to 2 hours. So we cover each part of the body, thanking, acknowledging the nose that smelled all the smells when I was a baby, and all the smells, the beautiful perfumes I mixed for you or whatever. And then usually then I'll say to the family, let's just leave the face out for a little while, and we'll go out and we'll walk around and gather ourselves to say, there's something about covering somebody's face and saying the final goodbye is so in preparation, we sit in the lounge room and we say, what is it that's going to be hardest about covering their face? We actually talk about it lots. And this tends to be more real in people, and I'm generalising, but people who want it very natural. They're really willing to delve into this. So then once the body's wrapped, leaving the face out for a little while, we usually sit and have a cup of tea. Good old cup of tea fixes everything. We sit before we cover the face. Then we go in and then we tie some ties around it. We might sit and plait the ties together and do another ritual of tying. And then within 24 hours, usually I find most people who even thought they wanted a 3-day vigil, often within 24 hours they're willing to let the body go. They wake up the next morning and go, oh, there's a dead body in the house. And then they think, yeah, I'm done. I don't need to do this anymore. So if we're doing it in the back of a car, I just get often it's one big man that'll carry the body out, because often when people die, they're already quite slim and light. Otherwise, the family just bundle out with a body in a shroud, put them on a plank, whatever we've thought I've done it on. We take the body out into the back of the car if we're doing natural, meaning sometimes we have no funeral director involved, and we drive to the crematorium or to the cemetery. And so that's as far as the ritual goes. The immediate family are just there, or we might have a little party. I've had bodies out in the backyard, all wrapped and ready to go, or in a coffin, and in a natural, untreated coffin. And we have the wake out in what I'm calling a wake. It's just a gathering of people, and we might all write on the coffin. But one thing I love is a jam jar. I keep calling it a jam jar. Just everybody putting messages of love in. So I just facilitate the process, whatever it is. Sometimes it's really organised and written down. And most times, the more I'm working with people who are really ready for the death, it's just doing whatever everybody's doing, just being there as if we're at an afternoon tea or a party.
Very naturally.
Is it time to take the body yet? We've organised the crematorium. We'll take it before 4, but who knows? And out we go. Most people I'm with, it's beginning to end, and they never see anybody else.
Mm.
Or I might work in collaboration with somebody like you. You and I have similar thoughts and feelings that I check in to make sure we're on the same page. And I'll say, Can you take over once the person's died, and do you want to step in? So it's collaborating. I don't have to be all things to all people all the time. And obviously there's families you fall a little bit more in love with and you want to do everything. But, you know, I've advised the family in advance, usually. But if I haven't, then in that next 4 hours, say I've only met them the day before and they say, I want a green funeral. And I say, do we know what that means? And they say, not really. I say, let's do the death first, and then I'll guide you through the process. And I'll whisper to them. I talk a lot to unconscious people and say, look, I know that you're really interested in green. I will honour that and support your family in doing that for you. So I'm often talking to an unconscious dying person too.
You know, that's interesting because it's so, and I think that's a really effective thing to make the family of the dying aware of, that you can talk to this person who's not conscious, or, you know, who's not responding, the dying person, because my understanding is the hearing is one of the last things to go, and they can still hear and they can still sense you. And I actually had a personal experience myself with that when in 2014, my dad finally, you know, passed away of cancer. And I came up here at the time, I was states away, so about 13-hour drive away. And I came up to be there and he was not responsive, but I held his hand and I was, I just talked through, you know, what I wanted to say to him and with my other family members in the room. And when I mentioned to my dad, you know, you don't have to worry about mom, you know, we will make sure she's taken care of. He squeezed my hand really hard. And then I made some comment that you don't have to worry, because we'd had years before of estrangement in our family. And I said, you don't have to worry. We will all stay firmly, you know, in harmony and united. And he cocked his head back and like smiled. He wasn't even, you know, he wasn't conscious. So you know, I'm sure you've heard many stories and you've experienced that yourself with people. I think it's so important that people speak to that person and communicate what you want to say, you know, when it's especially the last few hours. But I really thank you for all of this, because it paints a really good picture for people to see, you know, what is possible for a good death. And you mentioned also that you are a clinical hypnotherapist, and I kind of wanted to know, that's a whole new field that I know nothing about. So how does your work as a clinical hypnotherapist tie in with your work as a death doula, or is there a connection there?
Oh, absolutely. So mostly I did clinical hypnotherapy for birthing women and saw how effective it was in pain reduction or pain control for people during birth. So it became really obvious to me that with all the drugs we're using to try and manage pain and death, that there is alternatives. The breath is such a powerful thing. So for me, there's two things: reducing fear. In doing it, even if somebody's unconscious, I talk them through. I just say, I'm going to do a little bit of hypnotherapy with you. Go with me in my voice if you like, and don't follow me if you don't like. So it gives them a choice, even if they're unconscious. I'm going to talk to you about the fear that you might be having around being sick, around leaving your family, because that's one of the biggest reasons people hang on. They're not, just like you gave assurance to your father that your mum would be okay, and we'd all make an attempt to stay united. And I always said, don't make promises you can't keep. If you've not been united till now, you probably won't be.
Right.
But you can promise to do the best you can. So I might do, or resolving conflict. I do a hypnotherapy session and getting rid of, you know, anything that's standing in your way of dying, I call it, and just say, breathe into it, go down. What is your greatest fear? Let it melt away now, because death is not the enemy. So I do hypnosis on that. I do, but mostly on relief and control of chemotherapy side symptoms, things like that. But with the family, I send them all home with you're going to sleep so well tonight, because you know this is just a process and everything's easy. There's nothing hard about death. And when I say that, people go, really, there's nothing hard about death? I said, it's just the last breath.
And I think that speaks to what I said earlier, that people aren't used to having the empowerment of handling death. The corporate world just whisks them out really fast, and they take care of everything most times. So people don't, it's like this big mystery to them. And you really put that power back in their hands when you say, you can walk right through that process. It's not a difficult thing. You can be there through that transition. I love how you normalize it.
The other way that hypnosis does that is, if you can't look at them if they're not the sort of people who want to hear it face to face, I say, would you like to try a hypnotherapy session that I'll give you just a recording to take home, which will address some of your fears? And so my voice goes to them in a non-confronting way without having to sit opposite me and have questions asked. And I'm saying death is just a normal process. The last breath is just the last breath. There's nothing, movies have set up lots of images in our minds about what death is. And I've never seen a not peaceful death, except in wartime or violent death. But, and the other thing suicide. Sorry, I'm crossing over, but I don't want to forget this. I really encourage people, somebody who's suicide, to bring their body home, pick it up in a coffin and bring it home, and have that 4 hours or that 2 days of the coffin being at home to deal with some of these feelings. So we often it's a bit hard to get the bodies sometimes, even though legally you're allowed to take them, but often I do have to use a funeral director to get the body out for us, bring it home, and that's less confronting for the family. But I find having that body at home for 2 days or 10 minutes even, to really be angry with them or whatever feelings you've got sitting
absorb
in
that shock of loss, be there and deal with it.
The children. Yep, Daddy's in there and he's gone. The lid's sealed and he's never coming home, sweetheart. Never, ever, ever. It's so confirming. Anyway, so yeah, sorry, I've taken this off on a tangent.
No, that's good. That's good. Very good. Exactly. We really do resonate with that. I feel like what you do, your service makes it natural for people, and it puts the power back in the hands of the family and the loved ones, and it's much more personal. And I feel like I'm pretty, I'm an advocate of using less or even as little as possible corporate involvement, because for me, it makes it kind of sterile and too quick and done quickly. And that's because they have, they need more profit. They have to get more things going so they get them out of there quickly.
Death is the biggest business in the world. Death and marriage.
It really,
biggest
yes.
Many, many, many death doulas that train with me now work at funeral directors. They offer to do body pickups. So they really get whole phase of picking a body up with a family, because they go with a different energy to the somber phase. Hi everybody, how are you here? I'm just here to pick up Bill. It's a very different thing to standing at the front door in your suit or your black gear with your hands crossed in front of you. Hello, my name's
That's
Bill.
right. We've experienced that with my dad. He had used a corporate funeral, and they did. As soon as he was gone, they quickly, had them call, and they quickly came. And again, men in suits standing around with their hands in front of them, waiting, handing me a piece of paper to sign, and then they whisk them out, and I understand that's just the way they're doing their job. It's a business. They're doing what they're trained to do.
But they don't go any different.
Right. But I feel like from that experience and other tragedies that I've been through, that really rapid way of dealing with it is so impersonal. So that's why I really want people to learn more about what death doulas offer, and natural and green burials, and different kinds of direct cremation, and even eco cremation or aquamation. I know that as I'm just getting more into this with my creative memorial planning group, I'm learning that there's this huge death education movement that's happening to really do what you're doing, to bring that power back into the home, and including the interest in alternatives to traditional corporate funerals, and incorporating death doulas within the dying experience. What do you feel we need to do toward empowering others about death?
Oh, everything. Where do you start? Number one, I'd like to have an education program in schools. I mean, we act like everybody's old that dies. There are so many children dying that nobody's ever spoken to. When I'm called into that room of a mum and dad are exhausted, and I go to a little boy who's 8, and he says to me, "Denise, am I dying?" And I go, "Yep, I guess you are. Looks like it, doesn't it? Or what do you think?" Like, we need to, we just have to be more death literate. We've got to keep having conversations. And we've got to, and we don't got to anything. We've got to clear our own fear first. We can't work with other people if we're scared. Now, if this, I'm a bit scared of this disease that everybody's floating around. I'm not scared about the dying process. I'm scared about actually being sick with the virus.
You're not alone.
Doesn't look nice to me, doesn't look great to me. So I'm really working on that fear. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What would you even want to go on a ventilator when you go to hospital? We've got to keep talking, and we've got to talk about it like we talk about politics. There's nothing, I find talking about religion and politics very uncomfortable in company because I've got fairly rigid ideas these days. But it's no more uncomfortable than talking about death. And I think death cafes, death conversations, death dinners, death over dinner, I think we've got to advocate. I'm really basic human rights advocate, and this is one of them. This is one, the freedom to talk about death without being seen as morbid. I think, did you ask me what needs to be done? So the way that I've addressed it is to infiltrate the funeral. I speak at the Funeral Association, conferences each year. Put yourself out there. Every person who's comfortable speaking about death, and if you want to hand them my advance directive, which says shroud my body, don't wash it, don't touch my body after death, please leave me alone. We've got all these nonsense being sold. There's nothing you need to do to a body when it's dead. Nothing at all. They don't have to be spotlessly clean. And everybody says to me, well, what if they've got poo? And I'm all right, wipe the poo away. But I've never met a crematorium yet that doesn't accept a body that's a bit smelly. Do you know what I mean? We're
right.
obsessed with cleanliness.
Well, it's a money-making scheme there, so that's why it's happening. It's profit.
And it's all only been since post-war stuff. But anyway, so just, I shock a lot of people. I just, in the middle of conversations, when it leads in, we might be talking about health or something, I say, just keep bringing it up. Have you ever thought about what you want done with your body after you die? Oh, yes, I want this and I want that. I mean, I not so long ago organised a funeral for somebody that was bigger than any wedding I'd ever seen, and it was, almost $100,000. So if people want that and they've got the money to do it, how lovely. But when I said to them, actually, I said, you don't have to do anything. Did you know that? You don't have to do anything.
Right.
We're just
start the conversation. Right.
There is no law in any country of the world that says you've got to use a funeral director.
That's right.
So my way of then is, just as I've got to be working with the doctors to say, not everybody has to have chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Death is not the enemy. They're sick. They're okay to die. So we're educators of life, and
right.
that part of that is getting our own head around our own life.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the idea of bringing up a topic that's uncomfortable is similar in my mind to talking to someone whose views are different than mine. And I think that going into that and being courageous enough to sit in that state of discomfort really is a way to, even if you end up not agreeing, or even if you end up leaving because you're so uncomfortable, it's going to change your thinking. And even myself, when I'm talking to, clients or potential clients and people that I'm meeting in my group, often they've never even thought of that there's even something different than what they've been brought up with. And it's because, again, the corporate world has kind of taken over for the past couple hundred years. And I don't even advocate going to funeral directors if you want to. I mean, my take is explore alternatives. I mean, if you want a traditional and you want to lean that way, that's fine because everybody's different. But you will have to do some kind of a corporate choice for handling the remains. But that's it. That's the minimal involvement that you really need to incorporate a funeral business, unless you want, to use their facilities, or you want a viewing, or you want a burial of some sort. Then you're some crematories or mortuaries don't, offer that. They just offer the direct cremation part. But the point is, to really going back to your comment that you shock people. It's only shocking because people aren't used to talking about death. And the more we do it, the more normalized it becomes. And then people start thinking about it and they start changing their own plans, recognizing that they can be empowered to do that. So that really brings it full circle. The death talk is really an important way to empower people, to live courageously, to face things that are difficult. Yeah,
Sorry.
I was going to say, you had mentioned throughout this, and I'm sorry I didn't really make it that clear to my audience because I really wanted to focus this to educate my audience on what a death doula's involvement could be, and this has been a really great way to do that. But you had mentioned that you actually train death doulas. Can you tell us a little bit about what's involved in the death doula training that you offer? Because I do know that there are some members in the Creative Memorial Planning Group that are interested in that. So let us know what that's all about.
Well, number one, I don't think anybody needs to do training. I don't think that, deep inside every person sitting on earth, we have a deep knowledge and understanding about death. It's passed on through our generations into our DNA. We just know it. And if we're happy enough to trust, but most of us these days don't trust our intuition unless somebody's given us a certificate for it to say we can do it. So that became apparent to me. Luckily, I mean, when I started a lot of this stuff, there was nobody else doing it, so I didn't have anybody to teach me except dying people. That's where I learned it. But I run a 10-week program. It's 10 modules over 10 weeks, and you do have 6 months to do it, where we do a lot of self-discovery. So a big part of doula training for me is looking at your own death, is becoming comfortable with language, possibilities, and that you're going to die. And where are your own barriers to all of that, and what is your own prejudice, and getting rid of belief systems so that you go impose on other people. Have your own belief systems, that's fine. But even simply the word of passing over, a lot of people say, oh, they passed over. I say, well, where did they go? You've got to have that conversation ready. Just to the other side. I said, well, what's that look like? Where's that? Is it at 7 2nd Street, or where's this passing over? Because everybody assumes that somebody's got spiritual beliefs, or, cut your language down to they died. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't pass over. So, and then if you find, then I uptake the language. But the training course is very much about self-discovery, self-awareness, and then lots of tools and I think I really am trying to focus on from first diagnosis of death as well. We don't have to have all the treatments. Death is not the enemy. So the training is about getting you prepared for your own death and giving you some of the language around supporting somebody else. And then my advanced course, which is another 10 weeks, is incorporating a bit of hypnotherapy and pain relief mechanisms and getting to know the diseases better. You don't have to be medical at all, but at least if somebody says, oh, I've got this disease, you know that they might be breathless at death, or you know they might have a lot of pain, or some cancers cause more pain than other cancers. And so it's the advanced course is more getting into the actual awareness of the mind, body and soul as a disease and comfort measures, whereas the 10-week course is about what's death? What is it? How do I feel about it? What's it look like? And how can I support those family members through it? And getting the advanced, the pre-death planning. I mean, if you do your own pre-death planning, you're ready to talk to somebody else about it.
Right.
So it's a beautiful course, international course. And I just want to make comments that I have my own charity, and the village I live in has no electricity, no clean water. So I live in a really remote part of Cambodia most of the time, or until just recently, and Nepal and Thailand. And those people that are dying, we've got no tape measures, so when they're dying, we make their coffin lying beside them. So they've somehow taken on building coffins to just wrapping people, but cloth is no more available, so at least they can chop down a tree. And so the awareness of that is, while you're dying, we're making your coffin. There couldn't be anything more obvious to the dying person. Somebody doesn't have to say to me, am I dying, because we're making your coffin. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty clear. So I live in village situations where we have beautiful, simple rituals and rites. Everybody gets burnt by dusk that night. And the dream is that the cremation will be over by the morning, and that's all about the spirit. But, I work beside death. Children die. 46% of my children didn't make it to age 2 before, when I first went there. Children die whether it's, most of it's just from dirty water. So death is around me. We don't have any doctors. We don't have any hospitals. It's just
Sorry, where are you speaking to me from right now?
I'm in Sydney right now. I came home because of the pandemic. I couldn't get my visas organised. So I've come home to Sydney to be with family. I've got a beautiful 90-year-old mother who's healthy and well and on top of the world. But I just wanted to be close to my daughter and grandchildren, and we couldn't get visas to stay over there for the minute. So I'm having a bit of strange time in Sydney. So while I'm doing that, I've usually got about 5 other people I'm looking after all over the world. So I work on Zoom with dying people all over the world. So I might be in the middle of a village in Cambodia, but I'm looking after somebody in New York who wants to do advanced. I've got somebody at the moment who wants to do medically assisted die.
And that's really what the pandemic has opened up, the future for online connection. it's never going to be the same after this.
No. And look, I did do a lot of it before because I teach this course in about 4 or 5 countries.
Wow,
So
that's amazing.
the course is international. Yeah, it's not geared at Australia or any particular country. Death is death, no matter what colour your skin is, no matter where you're from. And, you know, it hurts and it's painful for the people who are left, basically, or else they're relieved and delighted you're gone, one or the two.
Mm-hmm. How would you, and we're going to drop the links in the comments there, but can you let my audience know if they wanted to get in touch with you about your services as a death doula or for your trainings, for if they're interested in becoming a death doula, how can they best connect with you?
Facebook, I mean, it's very easy. My webpage is deniselove.net. And it's all on there. The birth course, my death courses, my when a baby dies. I do a separate course about when babies die. I support a lot of women through stillbirth and death of their babies or children. So it's all on there, and I do them all online. I always did do them online, but now we do a Zoom as well as the online learning. It's very comprehensive. And I love to have people. I've got people studying in Greece and Italy at the moment, and Slovenia and Slovakia and all sorts of places. So
it's a small world, actually.
Yeah, just top it up. It's a very cost-effective course in my mind. And, we've got mentors available throughout your training, and we just love having international students. And death is death, whatever or wherever you live.
It's pretty universal there. So, and just so my audience knows, when we're finished, when this posts, I'll definitely have all the links where you can contact Denise Love and how you can get in touch with her. We'll plop that in the comments below. And also, when you're watching, people, my audience are watching this on the replay, because I didn't do this one live, please feel free to ask questions in the comments, get a dialogue going, and myself and Denise, I'm sure, will catch those comments and will respond to you. So Absolutely. Don't hesitate to ask as well. I just want to, I really appreciate this, and I want to wrap up today, because it's been a deep dive and an intense dive, but I want to really, again, thank you, Denise Love, end-of-life consultant, doula, trainer, and clinical hypnotherapist, for a really enlightening conversation, for sharing all of your experience and expertise with us. And I sincerely hope that this inspires anyone in the audience to include a death doula in their end-of-life plans. And I hope that you'll reach out to Denise using the links she's going to place in the comments below. So thank you again, Denise, for joining me today.
Absolute delight, and thank you for opening the conversation. It's a necessity, and I love being with you. Thank you, Jenny Leigh.